Hello and welcome to our now ongoing series here in the School of Animation and Visual Effects. We're going to delve behind the scenes of filmmaking with our own Studio X crew. I am Will Ziegler, I'm your host. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with the team behind Strawberry Mansion, directors Albert Birney and Kentucker Audley's vision of a not so distant future where holographic advertising is pervasive and even dreams are taxed. I want to show you a little bit of this before we start. It's sort of a fantasy, dystopic but not so dystopic future. I like the mixture of the high, brightly colored holograms with the cracks in the ground, and there's just this sort of feeling of unease that you get, and also just this stunning dream imagery, these visuals, surreal fantasy. It really must have required a variety of practical and digital effects. So we're going to speak to all of the people that were, well, not all, but only some of the crew, some of our Studio X crew, and the directors as well as producers for Strawberry Mansion and all of these dreamscapes that I just want to enjoy. This is some of my favorite parts were these mice, by the way. One thing I really enjoyed too is the mix of the practical effects and digital effects. So I'm sure everyone knows I will ask a lot of questions about that. Those that know me know I'm obsessed with that mixture of those two. And we will have a Q&A for the people in the chat as well. So you can hold on to your questions and then start to ask those later on. But I am really, really interested in dreams and dream imagery. We'll have some more of those clips to show in a little bit as well. But I want to ask Albert and Kentucker because I have a dream book right behind me that I had to put there because seeing dreams portrayed so well with the pacing and even that dream logic that's so hard to actually kind of describe to somebody. But everything in the movie also feels consequential without giving anything away there. How do you balance a story, a narrative that has to, it doesn't have to be literal, it can just be surreal, but also has to feel consequential at the same time?
Yeah, I think, it's easy sometimes to just like want to go off, or at least for me to want to go off and like just go on endless kind of dreamscape after dreamscape and get further lost in the dream. And we definitely had a lot more of that written, and even in an early edit, it was maybe 20 minutes longer of kind of going on these dream tangents. But Kentucker and I realized as we were editing it that like we kind of had to keep it around the central story, around the central romance of the movie, and keep coming back to that. And they would kind of make all of these little fun dreamscape moments hit that much harder if they were kind of felt like they're propelling the main story forward. So it was kind of a balancing act of like, okay, we're in this dream world a little bit. Now we need to come back and remind people that there is a story and there's, two characters that are kind of on this journey together.
Yeah, and I'll just add, yeah, again, I ditto what Al said. Thank you so much for including us in this and also just the great work that the unit that the school did. Um, yeah, that's the question, is balancing the dream logic with the narrative propulsion. And I feel like that was the main kind of question we were thinking overarching throughout the film, was just to we really loved this non sequitur feeling of being in a dream and feeling lost, and anything can happen, and it can shift on a dime, and it's very cinematic, I think, to get lost in those worlds. But a little goes a long way in the dream logic realm. um and I think we were trying to make sure that it didn't just feel like it was floating endlessly. It felt like, there was a there was a reason that uh, we were pulling these strings, but but also just with all these, it's always a balancing act. Of trying to, you know um of trying to do the fun cinematic, weird, strange, anything can happen thing, with also just sort of making this trajectory and the arcs of these characters pop as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, even though the romance or even the moments of, again, I don't want to give anything away, but that it threats of violence or violence, there's dramatic, high drama, right? Even these things that are grounded can become part of the dream, or the dream logic kind of takes you there. I really, really like that depiction. Part of what I think sells it every step of the way is the stylistic choices, of course, that you made. So, for example, I know you were both influenced by the fantasy films of the 1980s, and how does that, sense of style, or how does production design and all of those things play into the storytelling itself? And maybe our producer Emma can speak to this too a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, my cat was freaking out while you were asking that question, and so is Zoom events these days, I feel like. But I think it was about production design choices and using
Style, yeah.
resources. I mean, yeah, I think Albert and Kentucker can probably speak to this better than I can, but I know that sort of like using the resources that we knew we had in our wonderful production design team, Rebecca Morin and Lydia Milano. It was, I guess I could speak a little bit to what Becca was thinking about, because I know that. And it was a lot of like collecting and making sure the objects had this like history and meaning. And from a producing standpoint, it was a lot about like using everything we could, and like really making sure that our choices were like building the kind of world that we wanted it to build. A good example of that, I think, is like all the VHS tapes that are in that house were totally recycled. We use the insides for the costumes, and the outsides, each one of them had a little like dream title on them, and I felt like it just like I would walk around the house and look at them, and it just felt like we were totally immersed in this world where like I don't know, like Baby Got Bees was like one that I looked at every day, and like that's not in the movie, but that's in the world. And so yeah, I don't know, it was a lot of like, yeah,
Here's
That's awesome.
so yeah, using our resources, making sure that it all lined up, was fun.
So, if you guys would tell me a little bit about being on that set, for those of you that were there on set, because there's some amazing photos here we can maybe contextualize a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be great to see some photos.
Yeah, remind us.
Yeah. Like, there's one room we filmed a lot in called the Pink Room, which a lot of the artists know very well, because there were some, like, we made this whole room pink, but there were some seams in the wall that we had to digitally remove. But it was always fun to be in there, just because you never get to stand in a room that's entirely pink. There it is. That's testing out some of the smoke. There's Becca. There's our characters as Beats. Yeah, so here's the house. Those are all real VHS tapes that we've taken the insides out of. There's our beach day. That was a fun day.
Yeah, we just tried to, it's easy to when you're making a movie for cheap, to sort of like take the shortcuts in terms of like what you're actually filming. Like, this is a good example, the buffalo. We ended up doing, you guys ended up building a model and making a beautiful buffalo, but the day of, we actually made a paper mache, or a physical buffalo that we put in the space, and just tried to put as much in the actual rooms and fields. And we filmed on an actual ship that was, like this 19th century, huge sailing ship that was just docked in a harbor in Baltimore, that we made it look like it was on the open ocean. But it, you know, you can definitely tell, you know, if as much as we could, we tried to make everything live and in person, and it really helped get the characters there and immerse ourselves into the world and really try to make it seem as real as possible in frame immediately, you know. So we would have that to work off, but at least we, you know, we would start somewhere really transportive.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes from loving those movies that you mentioned, you know, from the 80s, like Neverending Story and Labyrinth, where it was before, you know, there was CGI or did a lot of digital effects. So you felt like all the costumes, all the miniatures, you could feel the texture. And, you know, it just, for me growing up watching those, that's just how I see like this story now. You know, if there's like a fantasy adventure film, I want to feel that it's real places. Having said that, like I definitely, this process kind of opened my eyes to what you can do with some more digital tools and CG and stuff I don't even know how to talk about, but I know that you all did it and it looks great. Like, and I think what I love is, you know, we built this buffalo, we had our version of it, but then you took it and enhanced it and it turned it into something different. And every time someone watches that now, they're like, how did you do that? What is this? Like, it makes this kind of new thing where it's not entirely handmade, it's not entirely digitally made, it's something in the middle. And I love what that space, you know, and definitely excited to explore more of that in the future now, kind of knowing what you can do.
I love hearing that. My students know that I love the mix of practical and digital, so I'm sure I'll have more questions about the buffalo shot. We'll take some more. We'll look at some more breakdowns and some work in a little bit. But let's go ahead and jump to our VFX team. So, you know, your role, as you all know, is to fulfill the vision of the director or directors in this case, and every film and filmmaker are going to have their own style. So I'm curious, in this one, what were some of the specific conversations that went on about maintaining the look of this film, and, you know, all the specific kind of not just the absurdity, but the colors and things that we saw in that. Like, what were some of the conversations you had to keep that consistent throughout the project?
Every shot that we ingest in, I mean, everything has sort of a color space by default that we have to make sure that we're following to keep the consistent color as we start. And then it's sort of our job to make sure that, you know, if we're adding or trying to take anything away, especially with like removing, you know, some of the seams and things like in the pink rim shots, making sure that the pinks match the pink that's on the walls, and whether it's being copied from one place, maybe that pink in that specific area is a little bit lighter or darker than it should be in that area that it's being copied to. So it's just care and a lot of just sort of playing around, make sure your values are right and make sure that your settings are kind of right to begin with.
And it's really important with the grain as well. We had to match anything we took away, like the seams had a certain grain on it, and we had to make sure to match that grain perfectly so it looked like it was always there. So that was like tiny details we had to watch out for.
What were some of the things? I know there were some 3D elements that were put in. So, and we have our CG artists as well here. So what were some of the things you had to put in, and then what goes into making sure that any totally, you know, computer creation for people in the audience that are watching gets matched to what is happening in the background plate?
Well, I personally worked on the buffalo head for the texturing and grooming. So it was a lot about references, understanding what was needed, what was wanted, and how it was gonna connect with the plate. So I did some of the lighting too. So it was a lot of care looking at the lighting and making sure everything would match up. So it was a lot of back and forth. And also in studios, what was very good and interesting was that it's not like a regular class where you just work on your own thing and then you're done. You have to communicate with other artists. Like Ryan and I communicated a lot because he was doing the animation and rigging. So I would get updates from him, and then I would give my lighting renders to another artist. So it's a lot of communication.
Yeah, I agree. I think communication and teamwork is the key, especially working remotely like this. And as you can see from the buffalo shot, it's great to have like a plate where you have a reference of the buffalo prop, the buffalo puppet, and then we can enhance it using CGI. We we try to make it as realistic as possible using realistic deformation. Try to look up the references from nature, how a buffalo blinks, how they breathe, what happens when they're in pain, how many breaths they take, uh, and yeah, we are sort of think to how realistic and how far will we take this, because it is, we are making like a real buffalo that's hurting, but also a buffalo that's in a dream. And so yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
I remember thinking that watching it that, well, realistically, maybe the buffalo would be freaking out more, or maybe not. I don't know what buffalo do when they're in that state, but it is a dream, and in a dream, things don't have to literally be the case they would. So, yeah, it's just a really interesting situation to be in, where you are imagining, you're taking visuals normally to make them hyper real, right? You want to make everything look super real, and in this situation you're doing that, but also not doing that because it's supposed to be for a dream fantasy surreal thing. So yeah, we saw some of the things that had to be added there, so some of those extra pieces that were had to match exactly to what was happening in the pink room. Yeah, what are some of the choices that get made? And I actually kind of want to start, I mean, our leads can speak to this too, but I'm actually really curious what Catherine, as our supervisor for the Studio X stuff, and Sasha as our producer, Melissa too as a producer for that. What are some of the things that get decided when you're talking to the filmmakers, and Jason also? What are some of the things that you want to? What are some choices you actually can make that aren't just, oh, you have to do this and this and this? What are some creative choices that get made along the way?
Well, I just want to mention that, I mean, first of all, it's our job to help the story be told. So really, we are working with the filmmakers to see their vision through. And so it's when we first meet with a client, we basically try to figure out what it is that they want, and we ask for reference, and we ask for artwork, and we ask, trying to prevent the time it takes to figure out what the filmmakers want while in production, and seeing what we can do to make sure that things go as well as possible. So the story being told, is the part that, and it's the part I love, because I think that especially when you get something that's hyper real and it's colorful and beautiful to look at, and it's just so much fun for us to help that story be told, and especially if there is a really good story to be told, which is why I love independent film so much, because it's usually about the story. And I know that seems like everything should be about the story, but that's not really the case. So we're really lucky to be working with filmmakers like these to basically just assist in the storytelling process with the areas that we're good at.
Yeah, how much creative, like how many choices do you make after first taking in the project and working on it? How much of it is in your hands to decide the fate of?
For when we're working with independent filmmakers, we really want to get their direction and get their input first, kind of before we go. But it is really collaborative. But I'd love to hear from Melissa, just on terms of how she kind of managed the team, worked with the clients to get all of that together. So we actually did have some really good direction to move it forward.
Sure thing. Throughout the whole process, I felt like we needed to maintain a strong sense of communication between the artists as well as our clients, Kentucker and Albert, and the rest of their crew. And in this case, I felt like we had the great fortune of being given a rough cut of the film early on, so that way we could do a better job of matching our CG effects with the incredible practical effects that they were already created ahead of time, especially since a lot of the reference photos and whatnot they provided for us were actually the graphics they created for things like the soda cup and the box of cereal. All that was significantly helpful in allowing us to not only meet their needs, but also do so by the deadline that they were asking us to fulfill our work by, that is.
So for that's amazing. Like, I love to know, and I think our audience really wants to know, because some of them are thinking of going into Studio X or coming to the school, but I think that they would be interested in knowing like what those conversations are like between, you know, the directors and the VFX crew, or the producers and the VFX crew. So I will actually I'll come back to our VFX supervisors, but to our directors and to producer Emma, from your side of it, how does that look? How does it look when you're sending your shots, your babies, over with your very detailed instructions, and it's now going to be in the hands of Studio X, knowing that some of them are students, or all of the artists are students?
Well, yeah, right from the beginning, felt like the communication was really, we talked a lot about that in the beginning of like, I think you all said, the more you can tell us, the better that'll be, the more we'll know what we're doing. So try to just like get really detailed. And sometimes I'd think, okay, this is so detailed, and you'd come back with more questions that would be even more detailed. And so, oh, wow, okay, let's go even further in. And sometimes that was the first time we were really thinking about how to verbalize this, or, you know, it's one thing to kind of be like, we want this to happen, but when you've got, you know, 30 students that are waiting to get on it, they need to know if it's going to turn left or right, or how long, exactly what frame this thing is going to happen. So yeah, just kind of like, you know, there were long email chains of paragraph after paragraph of kind of explaining, you know, what we'd want, and then come back, Melissa would send an email and kind of ask some more questions and take those. And it was, you know, for me, it was very exciting, because knowing that there was a team of you all and all these students working on it, you know, I would be out for a walk on like a Saturday, and I'd come home and there'd be like a new shot or something. I said, that's amazing. You know, they just were working on this, and here's the latest version of, you know, the buffalo or the car removal or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So it was really exciting. And I really appreciated the, Melissa, especially your attentiveness to the details. And, you know, usually I think maybe because you're all on the West Coast, I'd wake up some mornings with a big email, and it was always like, all right, let's get right into this. Let's get down to work. And I knew like the sooner I would respond, then the sooner you all would put it back into the pipeline or get working on it. So yeah, for me, it was exciting just to like have that, knowing that there was a team kind of out there ready to work as if we could get you all the material. So mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it felt like from my perspective.
I think from a producerial perspective, which is a little different when it comes to post and VFX and all of that, especially, it was like myself and my producing partners were really working just as if, I mean, you guys are a fully functioning sort of VFX studio, so that was how we were moving forward. And I think that was necessary for everyone, and also just for our own timelines and everything like that. So it just was very normal, professional, and like productive way for us to get our movie done. And it just added so much to our final product. And yeah, I think throughout the process, we were just trying to make really intentional choices about where to like put this extra time, and you guys just really made that, just like brought that to a level that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
I'll echo those remarks and say, yeah, it was really exciting. We're both like, Al and I haven't really done a lot of post special effects stuff in the past, so it was sort of, we were kind of green with the whole process, so it was really helpful to go through it with you all, and we learned so much, and our expectations were far exceeded. I keep thinking about the buffalo shot, which was in the script, and even in the film, it's not a huge part of the story, but once we realized that we could make this thing look so amazing, it adds so much to the story, and a very crucial part of the movie. And very early on, it just sort of establishes the movie as like, okay, if they can do that, then this is a movie worth paying attention to. And I think every little piece of professional and artistic VFX that we got from you guys just really added that level of professionalism and gave it an extra boost. And it was a pleasure to go through the process for the first time, essentially. Yeah, we learned a ton.
I feel like I'm always learning just being around all these people. Right.
Yeah.
But for our VFX supervisors, though, I really want to know, like, how does this get managed? Like, how everything comes in, and you have student producers who are doing an amazing job, and the communication is there. But what is the actual, like, taking all of these resources and all of these people and creating that organization look like?
Well, I think, Sasha is the glue that actually keeps everything organized, and her production team. And Jason and I are supervising the actual work and making sure it's of the professional quality. And so that's why we have it class oriented, because they're there with us. I don't know, Jason, did you want to speak to that? You're muted.
You're muted.
It just comes down to communicating from the get-go, right? Like, I just, like, one example in particular was the spider that we had to turn around really fast. We didn't have enough people to model and rig and do everything on that, so we let everyone know, and we were okay to actually start with an existing model we already had. So we were already given like a real big like just a leap ahead of how much time it took, so that we could just focus on the rigging and the texturing of it and get it turned around a lot faster. So just communicating if there's any potential issues that might show up, just letting, in this case, Melissa and Emma know what those issues are, so that if it's something too big, we can maybe push it to a different area, or if it's something we can take some shortcuts, we'll do it, and, you know, do a little movie magic here or there. And ultimately, it just comes down to communication being the key. That's really the main thing.
That's what we hear over and over, because it's true. And that's why everyone, when you can communicate with your team, get up front, in front of things early, and collaborate really well, everything will move much more smoothly.
I also think that the fact that we've been doing it for over 12 years, and we've made some mistakes, and but we basically have just grown like any small company grows, where we, start small, and then we have to adapt for a larger group and larger projects and more projects, and start to set more limits, and so that it doesn't get out of control, so that we can keep our reputation and make sure the students can still do the work to a professional level. Because at the end of the day, we're doing this mainly so they can get work when they get out. And so it has to be top-notch work. And so I would just say a lot of it is just about time and experience that and learning how to deal in our very unique pipeline. That's not like any other pipeline, professional or in any school, because we have different parameters to work with.
I see a lot of excitement in the chat. Get your ideas for your questions about Strawberry Mansion ready. We're going to go to those. But since we've been talking about all of the post effects, I want to back up, because I'm really interested in the practical effects as well on set. So you talked a bit about creating that, but the actual creatures and the costumes and the masks and even some stop motion and things that were done. So tell me a little bit about working on that, directing that. How does that look, on the day?
Yeah, well, so we had a lot of different costumes from different places, but we were able to, we're in Baltimore, or I'm in Baltimore, and Emma's in Baltimore, and that's where we made the film. And in here in Baltimore are great mask makers called Clockwork Creatures. And I have loved their work for many years and always wanted to get them to make some masks for us. They did the two rat sailors, they did like the blue demon, and they did the werewolf mask. And I knew that if we could get them to make these masks, that it would really, any scene with those characters would just feel bigger and more, you know, frightening and fantastical. And so they really were amazing to work with. And the two people that actually made the masks at Clockwork Creatures, Matt and Shannon, were also in the rat sailors. So it was, I'll say, like, directing them, it was so much fun because, you know, you're staring at these two life-size rat sailors who are having a great time and dancing around in between takes. And, you know, we filmed, I think it was only maybe 2 or 3 days with them. And anytime that they were on set, there was just like a joyous mood because everyone was just like getting pictures with these two giant rat sailors. Yeah, so those costumes. And then the stop motion, we worked with an old friend of ours, Lawrence, who I met him back on Vine. He's a great animator. He does a lot of different styles. He can kind of do a little bit of everything. But we both, Lawrence and I, first bonded over a love of Beetlejuice and kind of like the stop motion effects in that. So just kind of like, you know, you showed earlier, but like a face melting, kind of like how Large Marge in Pee-wee, which is not Beetlejuice, but similar Tim Burton movie. But just like when a movie can all of a sudden put some claymation in, and you know that it's clay, but it's like, it just looks cool and it's fun. And all those movies from the 80s that do that, where, you know, it's just very free and anything can happen. So that was great working with Lawrence. And, you know, we would send him, he's out in West Coast in Portland, Oregon. We'd send him some footage, and, you know, a couple months later, he sent back like a finished file. He also did the caterpillar jumping through the ocean, which that shot, it's a combo. So he did that. And then there's like, the splash is like some kind of real fabric or something, but then we also had another digital person come in and just clean it up a little bit and add like ripples. So it's like, when you're watching, you're like, what am I even looking at? It looks like it's stop motion, but it really looks like it's coming out of the water, and there's like a fake splash and a real splash, and put it all together, and it kind of just creates this strange dream vision, you know. And I think the way that like dreams can feel so disjointed and all over the place, that's how it felt. Like, let's get all these different types of effects, stop motion, practical costumes, some costumes that are realistic, some costumes that are more cartoony and paper mache. Let's get digital CGI mixed with the real buffalo, all these different things, just put them together. And hopefully it just kind of feels like that, you know, smorgasbord of chaos that a dream can get you there, you know? So that's what we were thinking.
Yeah, you also asked what it was like on the day for some of these stop motion effects, which makes me think of the time we were on an overnight shooting the dinner scene, and it was like 4 a.m, and Albert had everyone sort of stop and sit around so that he could animate the fly going across the plate. And I don't know if you've ever been on an overnight, but everyone was Albert had a little chopstick and was just like moving the fly across the plate, and everyone's like, can I go to bed?
That's a dedication right there.
Yeah, and also like I think that just helped, everyone was totally on the same page about that, whereas that is something that probably could have been done at a different time, but having that there with everyone there, with the characters there, it just made it all feel cohesive. So it was okay.
Yeah, I think the practical stuff just, I mean, I love all the digital effects too, but we can ask more about embellishing one from the other, because you've already touched on that quite a bit. But yeah, from the buffalo shot to some of my favorite characters I had to write down. So Albert, you, I believe, inhabited in not just the suit, but in as an actor in your mind, Saxophone Frog and the Blue Demon. I want to know about what's it like to be in those costume type character roles.
I really enjoy it. Kentucker and I made a film before Strawberry Mansion called Silvio, about a gorilla who can't speak, and I played Silvio the gorilla. So I've had some experience with it. And for me, when I put on a mask, you know, I just get lost in it a little bit. And for both the frog waiter who plays saxophone and the blue demon, I don't know, it's not too much thought. It's kind of like you put the mask on, you put the costume on, and I'm there. You know, I don't have to think too much about it. And it's kind of like improvising a little bit. You know, you got the camera there, you got the actors that you're working off of, and you know, especially with the blue demon, there were some decisions I didn't think about that I just started doing. Like the blue demon is kind of like breathing and grunting, and you know, I didn't know that was going to happen until we're there, take one, and all of a sudden it's like this demon comes out, you know. As I think it's probably like any actor might say, like you get a little bit lost in the performance, or you get like kind of, you surprise yourself, you know. It's like you're just doing things in the moment. So I love that. And I know some of the crew members were maybe wanting to get someone else to play the blue demon, because they're like, well, you know, Kentucker's already in the scene, and it'd be best if we had you behind the camera to help direct the scene. And I was just thinking like, well, we did the whole Silvio movie and we were both in front of the camera, so I think we can do it. But also, this is like what I'm looking forward to the most, like playing that character. Like that's the most fun I'm gonna have in the entire shoot, is that one day. So I was like, no way, I'm giving that up. I'm the blue demon.
You mentioned the phrase losing yourself in a role, but that Kentucker, your dream auditor, like loses himself almost in these dreams, and they're someone else's dreams. So did it feel surreal? You've got all these things surrounding you. You've got him in these outfits. You've got, you know, your wonderful script. I mean, how did it feel to be playing those dreams?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's the fun part. It's fun when you can, you know, I think I kind of come from a more naturalistic background in terms of some of my early work, and as an actor, I've always kind of tended towards realism and understated. But it's fun when you can kind of just kind of like lose yourself in these in these rabbit holes, and you have these things coming at you, and these rat sailors just pop up out of nowhere, and this blue demon is interacting with you in a very threatening way, and it's like the mask looks really scary, and these people and these masks look so realistic of the rat sailors. And so it's easy to get lost if it's really if you have these elements in place. And yeah, I mean, that's the fun part. It's exciting when it feels like playing, and it feels like childlike, and at least for the moment, that's kind of what we're really kind of trying to tap into, is this innocence and this wonder. And it's simple, you know. We don't overcomplicate it, and it's not, you know, this you know, it's not like an intellectual exercise. It's just pure sort of imagination, and you know, and it's just like being a kid and playing around with your friends.
However, I just want to mention that there's some pretty serious content, you know, beneath it all. And do you think that it somehow changes the way it comes across when you're doing this very stylized interpretation of a pretty serious topical political situation, really?
Yeah, well, you know, again, it's nice to find the balance where you know, I probably overstate how like a lighthearted, you know, it's lighthearted by nature, but there are some darker themes, and there are some you know, some commentary of what we think the world is becoming, or what we sort of how bombarded we feel with hyperconsumerism, and just being sort of like algorithmed away with our, like, not to give too much away about the story, but there's an element with your dreams are being taxed, and the advertisements are being pumped into your dreams, which, you know, seems far-fetched on one hand, and also highly plausible on the other. So, you know, we definitely try to balance some heavier themes just to make it kind of, it's this combination of like, we talk a lot about like, is this a kids movie? It kind of could be a kids movie, but also it's, we want to be in the world and sort of tackle things that happen in the world and find some contextual, and try to make some sort of statement of how we interact with the world and how we view the world and the possible ways humanity is sort of going towards.
Yeah, and they're not mutually exclusive, right? I mean,
yeah,
children's stories can be great moral tales about reality as well.
Yeah, and I think those are my favorite films where you're transported. You watch the film for 90 minutes and you feel like you've left your troubles behind for 90 minutes. You're transported to another, place, or just like the feeling of watching Back to the Future. I love that feeling as a kid. I would watch that and I would just get so wrapped up in this other story, and then maybe as you get older, you realize, oh, there's some other stuff going on here, or some stuff that went over my head as a kid, but it's you can appreciate it on both levels. I don't know if Back to the Future is the best example, because maybe there's something else going on there. Maybe it's just about don't go.
It's about bullies. We all know what it was about. Yeah. So let's talk about some specific shots, because there was a good question in the chat about asking what was extremely difficult to execute for the CG artists. And I did want to specifically, Jason brought it up, but I want to specifically call out the buffalo shot, because it was practical effects to create that world for to inhabit on the day of, and then also embellishing that and adding actual rigged animation. So let's talk about that one. Those are involved in the buffalo shot. Actually, Jason, why don't you start us off on that, and then we'll hear from our artists as well.
Yeah, I want to let Maria and Ryan really.
You want to go? Okay, all right.
We had a team of 3 people really tackling the buffalo. It was Maria, Ryan, and Hannah was helping out over the summer with the initial model. And really, I'm going to step back and let them talk about it. I just kind of gave direction and helped them sort issues out, but they're the ones that put it together.
Well, for me, it was challenging because I was doing things I hadn't done before. So I had never done realistic for an animal. And I was learning sort of the grooming in another class. So I was applying what I was learning in other classes to the project, while at the same time receiving feedback and learning how to put that feedback into the buffalo. So it was always like a back and forth thing where I was like learning and doing at the same time.
Yeah, well, for me, I've never actually animated a buffalo before. So it's a very interesting and exciting challenge. And I love to learn about how a buffalo actually moves, and, adding all the controls on the face so that it can deform and can do all the details, again, how many it can blink, and basically convey that sense of pain. And because the buffalo, it's dying, but also it's in a dream. So is it actually dying? And I think a lot of back and forth too with Jason and Maria, also with our compositor Romina, which to combine the shots and plate of the puppet and also the CG element to create like this a mixture, a blend of not entirely CG but also a puppet. So I think that's it's really, I love it. It's a very exciting experience.
It's one of my favorite shots. I have to say. I will ask at the end. I want to get everybody's favorite shot, so keep that in mind if you think about it. It could be one you worked on or not. And I know that's like an impossible thing to ask of our directors, what your favorite shot is. But I'll let you think about it. In the meantime, I want to ask about the spiders, because that also had some CG. We saw that shot earlier as well. So we won't get into the spiders in the film. That might be giving something. But tell me about the actual creation of the spiders.
Yeah, that one was a little more time sensitive. Like we didn't have as much time to focus on that one. So we started with a spider model so that we had just a big advantage in the time. I just put us a little ahead of the curve. And then we just tweaked the model a little bit changed the textures, and then did our rig on top of that. So it probably saved us a number of weeks just by being able to use an already existing spider. Jonathan Kyle Brown helped do the rigging and animation on that one. I don't think he's here right now, but he helped us do the rigging and animation for that part. And then Maria did the texturing again, like changed the textures around and made it for this particular show. We updated everything. Her. Well, no, it's back.
Whichever way
Whichever way
pointed, yeah.
Ryan's down there somewhere. Everything's backwards.
It's all different for you. It's just different for you, Jason.
It out.
One more question. So this is not from the chat because I don't know if it's part of the pipeline that everyone generally knows. But at the end, right? And Ryan started to talk about it. You've got the practical, you've got the CG, you've got even the film grain and stuff they were talking about. It all has to come together at the end, and someone has to do that. So let's hear from our compositors and tell me, especially on a show like this, like what's involved in once again maintaining that style for the vision of the directors, but what goes into the compositing?
Courtney, you want to take that?
Sure. So going into the compositing, we're always looking at what needs done. It's kind of putting everything together and making sure it's ready to be finalized, especially as a lead. I was looking at me and Ron and Jan were looking at every single shot and making sure they all were cohesive, because that was one of the biggest parts of compositing, is working with everyone and making sure everyone's is cohesive. So we were looking at color, grain, the seam lines, because we had similar shots, the pink room. So the pink room had certain lines and we all had similar shots that showed similar lines. We had to make sure we were communicating with people with the same shots. And so going about that, it's just a lot of communication. And I like to say it's puzzle solving, because there's no one straight answer for compositing. You are always problem solving and puzzle pieces, how to figure out what to do where. So I feel like that was a big thing too, was figuring out what is the best way to cover up these seams. And once we figured out a good way to do it that worked for most of the shots, we communicated that. So it was a lot of communication, I would say.
Yeah, I would add also that, one of the biggest, I think the biggest job as a compositor is you act as a protector of what's in front of you, whether it's the actual footage that you're being given by the client, or, even if it's just the CG that, Maria and Ryan and my God, everyone else that worked on that, like just protecting it to its highest quality to make sure that their work gets shown, at its highest potential in the project as well. So yeah, I think, for us, the biggest thing is just really making sure that everything is as cohesive, as clear, and really as high quality as it possibly can be before it, gets back in the hands of the client and gets shipped off.
Yeah, do you guys want to, Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about that last week of us doing the finaling and what that meant and what that took?
Yeah, we got to hear about the crunch time.
Yeah, I'll try. It really came down to the wire in many respects, because as Ron eloquently put it, it can be a juggling act to try to bring all of these various elements together, especially when you're working on a project that's got both CG elements as well as the live action practical effects. So we were racing against the clock a good deal of the time, making sure that not only everything was brought together and that none of the pieces went missing, but to also, as Ron and Courtney put it, making sure that everything looks good and cohesive. And Ron and Jan, they did an impeccable job of providing the support that Courtney needed in order to make sure that that consistency was maintained throughout all of the shots that we were working on, especially during the shots that took place near the end of the film, where we were able to throw in some CG elements that you don't really notice right off the bat, but really added to the drama of the story that we were trying to support.
So even if you had had extra time, it would still be used to keep getting everything even more perfect. It's just, always use all the time you have. Yeah.
The effects artist, and Catherine knows this, and I'm sure on the director and producer end for the live action is that, we always will work to the last minute, and we're always looking for extra minutes. Extra moments, is like much extra time as we possibly can. So it's always that balance towards the end, and we were definitely down to the wire on this. And I know Melissa, Courtney, Ron, Yan, and I were on Zoom on a couple of nights pretty late, just trying to wrap up all the shots. And we're always just trying to get as much time as we possibly can, but the delivery is always probably the most exciting part of our job. But it was fun.
Yeah, they were building up the delivery throughout the entire process, since we were racing against the clock in order to meet a deadline that shifted more than once. And what was really interesting that I found is that the buffalo shot was one of the ones that we got to work on right away. And it was yet also the last shot that we completed and delivered right there at the very end. So it has a lot of significance for us, not just from the technical and creative standpoint, but also from it being like a personal triumph for everybody that worked on that shot.
And
I really
so appreciate you being able to meet our deadline.
I really just want to give a huge shout out to Romina on that too, because I know Romina just really kicked ass on that shot, and it turned out so beautiful. We even, I remember it was getting down to the wire, and I have the faster computer at my house, so we ended up rendering the shot on mine, just because it was just like, oh my God, it's like, we got to get these last details in, and we got to make it, how do we do this?
So the blood in the hole was also done by in compositing, and she had, and Romina, who's not here with us, but she had to put the buffalo head and integrate it with the practical paper mache. So it really was a team effort, and it was sort of like, if it looks good, it's going in the movie. If it doesn't, then it's not. And so when it got in, and when you guys liked it on the film, when you liked it, we were just all so excited, because it was like, there was a point where we thought, I don't know if this is going to happen, so it was fun.
You heard it here first. Other people who worked on the movie, you heard it here first. We are going to go to some audience questions. They have some amazing questions, but I'm going to do one more of my questions first.
I have a question first, Will.
Oh, you're going to jump in front of my question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a pre-question, or a comment and a question. Well, first off, congratulations on getting into Sundance.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Fantastic. And then my question is for you guys, since it was so different this year with COVID, how was that? Because I've been a few times in normal years, which is great. It's an amazing experience, but everything is just so different this year because of that. So I was just wondering how that went for you guys.
Yeah, it was weird.
Nothing else needs to be said.
Good answer. I love it.
I was sitting, I was at Sundance sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now in front of the computer. And Kentucker actually came down here from Brooklyn. And so he was sitting right here. And that was our Sundance, we said, at least we can be together. After working on this for years, it's like, at least we can, be together. But it's like everything else this past year. It was just like kind of a bummer, but there were some good moments. Just to have one bright thing I'll say is, if it was a normal Sundance year, we would have gone there, and a handful of people that had tickets and were able to travel and get the money to travel, and it would have been seen by a couple, way less people. But because it was online, my mom saw it opening night, my oldest friend saw it, my high school friends, it was all these different people that wouldn't have been able to see it on premiere night saw it. So that was kind of cool to share the official movie premiere with like, you know, just everybody in my life. So that was one thing I said, this is kind of cool.
They even said that more people saw the film than any other Sundance. You know, it just, there were so many people who you could show it with, and
Yeah.
it makes me wonder if they're just going to do an online component from now on because of that.
Yeah, we'll see. And also, you know, this was their first time, so they're figuring it out. And I think they did some great things. And there's certain things, you know, I mean, it's hard. It's like hard to a festival that's all about getting together and being in a movie theater and, you know, talking to people face to face and meeting. It's like, how do you translate that into the virtual space? And it's really tricky, you know. And after this year, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, oh, let's go to a party on Zoom. You know, it's like you just want to like get away from the computer.
Woo!
Yeah, yeah.
We all pick different backgrounds. Yeah, it's a party.
Yeah. But it was all right.
I really want to know, I've been a fan of Dan Deacon for years. What was it like to work with Dan Deacon on the music? Because it just adds so much to the movie. I just love it so much.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, same as you. I've been a fan for many years, and he's just like, he lives in Baltimore, and Albert's friends with him, and he introduced. And then, you know, over the last couple of years, we've gone on these tubing trips, and I got to know him a little bit there. And he saw and liked our previous film, Silvio, and expressed that he would be interested in working with us. And, you know, that's all. You know, that was an incredible opportunity, and I didn't quite understand how much it would transform the movie, because we hadn't quite worked with a score composer before that. And just his attention to the movie and the way he grasped the movie was incredible, like above and beyond, kind of like, I think he understood the movie more than any of us. He would write these long emails in the middle of the night, sort of like with his interpretation of every like beat of every scene. And we're like, oh, I never thought of that, but yeah, it's beautiful. And he would, you know, come up with these epic themes and just keep pushing the music was just like, every time I heard a piece of music, I wondered if it was too much, if it was too big. And then the second time I listened to it, I was like, it's got to be that big, you know, because it, you know, it's just like the whole movie has this sort of melodramatic, over the top feeling that, like, again, is that sort of never ending story, 80s kids movie feeling that Dan was able to just nail. And it was a joy to work with him.
Yeah. Emma and I just saw him today. We were watching the movie on like really good speakers and just kind of doing some final music and sound notes. And just like Kentucker said, he would just like pause it and explain what he was doing with a certain musical motif or something, and explain the scene to me more than I have, like better than I ever understood it. Like there's certain parts of the story where it's like, how does this happen with this? And I don't quite know how to put it together, but he's like, here's what's happening here. And to have a composer that's like that committed to like just digging into a weird, surreal story and finding, you know, the emotional beats and like how to enhance it was incredible. And yeah, like Kentucker said, I think his emails were the only ones that maybe were a little bit longer than Melissa's in terms of just all of the detail and everything. And some mornings I'd get one from each. I had to wake up and there'd be a new email from Dan and Melissa, and I'd have to, all right, let me take 45 minutes to read both these emails with my coffee here.
That's awesome. It's that attention to detail and that passion. We're going to go to questions now. We've got about a half an hour. Let's do your questions. There's a few in the chat. This first one, I want to read it. It is not a question, even with a question mark, but I got to read it. Your multiple styles of animation was your ace in the hole to create a chaotic film? Question mark. I think that's what you were talking about, Kentucker and Albert, earlier. And yeah, kind of. Like all the different, you're talking about bringing in all the different styles of things. It kind of added to that dream chaos in a really good way. To the directors, what are your future plans for new projects? And I like the follow-up here. We did not plant this person. Would you work with Studio X again?
Yeah, yes, that second one, definitely. And the first one, yeah, we just kind of want to keep going. we like we've been saying, Silvio was our first collaboration, and then this is our second, and we have an idea for a third that kind of feels like it's in the same universe, just kind of getting a little bit bigger, but kind of in the same world, with animation mixed with costumes and fantastic things happening, but rooted in very human and emotional moments and characters. So yeah, it's a little too early to get too much more deeper into it than that, but yeah, there will definitely be some things that I think a couple buffaloes here and there that Studio X might be able to help us get there if they'd have us back.
Well, now that we've had this experience, we're dreaming bigger. You know, it's like we know what's possible now, and we kind of felt like we put everything into Strawberry Mansion, like as big as of a movie as we could make. You know, it felt like a way too ambitious. People thought we needed $20 million to make this after the script, but we're trying to write a script that feels like it would cost $70 million, and then, you know, just see how we can, you know, it's just, that's just the fun of it. Just like write things that feel like you don't know how to do it, and you just try to figure out a way to do it. But you definitely would work with Studio X again. It was a great experience.
Yeah, we'll try not to change the deadline.
Yeah, sorry about the deadlines.
It's a
our
deadline
bad.
thing.
Well, now I know you had a good reason.
Yeah. Also, too, like from, you know, just from my own experience of, you know, Catherine and Jason, I've done this for so long. It was actually a really good learning moment for the artists, the student artists, on how to deal with that in a way that, you know, we didn't lose our minds and go crazy, and we still had a lot of fun getting it done and make the deadline too. So even though that happened, it was, you know, it was a good moment for us.
Well, we planned it all along. You're welcome. There's a real world obstacles here.
I'm stuck on, I'm pretty sure there was an implication there that there is a Silvio cinematic universe.
Definitely.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
like that.
Silvio. You haven't seen the last of Silvio. You know, he's just getting, when you get these masks made, you know, like now I've got right off camera here, I'm looking at like 4 of them. It's like you know, you spend all this money, they look great. You want to just keep using them. And even if it's just a little cameo in the background, you gotta put it in there somewhere.
All three of the films will intersect in all these different ways that you'll notice. Even Silvio has things from Strawberry Mansion, even though it's before, if you watch closely.
Now there's going to be a whole bunch of blogs dedicated to searching for all the things.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. It's kind of long, so I'll chop it down. But on this question of the practical effects and the digital effects, when do those decisions get made? Do those have to get made very early, like I think some of us assume, or do they happen throughout? When do you have to kind of decide shot by shot that something is going to be practical or digital?
Oh geez, I guess, you know, certain things, like for example the caterpillar jumping out of the water and the whole sequence, like that wasn't in the scripts, you know, so it came pretty late. Like we were editing and we realized we needed this new element, and I think there was talk of it being digital, there was talk of it being animation, and it kind of just came down to like, well, what can we do with our time, like our deadline, and also like we've only had 2 moments of stop motion. We need another stop motion here, you know, like even if we had enough time to do this CG, it might be better to, like, you know, if you only have 1 stop motion claymation moment in the whole film, it might stand out, but if you've got a couple sprinkled throughout, it kind of feels more cohesive or something. So I think a couple of those factors kind of led for that one to be stop motion. But, you know, it's just kind of like, you just go with your gut, you go with like, you know, what you can do with the time you've got and the resources you have. You know, we were using Studio X. We had another friend who was doing some digital effects here and there. I was doing some effects. We had the animator, and you just kind of like look at everything on a big Google document and start to like, well, this would make sense over here. This would make sense over there. And a couple things here and there might shift or change, or kind of like with the caterpillar shot in the ocean again, like we realized, okay, the splashes look okay, but they could look better with a little bit of digital help. So it's like you just kind of, you know, you're always applying, new things and peeling things away and finding the thing, and eventually you get to it and you're like, that's it. And I don't know if there's so much like, I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, you can do all this planning, but you've got to also, you know, be a little bit loose to go where the project's taking you, and it's going to shift and change as you go, and just be open to that. And I think that goes for filmmaking and just any kind of art making in general. It's like you've got these ideas, but as soon as you get down there and you're working on it, you gotta be loose. You gotta kind of go where the flow is taking you.
It's improv in a lot of ways. Not entirely, but you have to be able to improv, I think. Yeah, all right, very good. So, unless anyone had anything else to add to that, I like this question quite a bit because it is very, very important, maybe even iconic in this movie. What special attention did you pay to color within your film? Were there specific, I mean, I love the movie and I love the colors in it, so I could answer this, but I want, obviously, you guys to answer this. What were the specific colors that are emphasized and, you know, the themes and things around color?
Well, there's the pink room, obviously. That's a big one.
That's why I wore my pink today.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even mean to, but yeah, the pink room, it's like a dreamscape that happens. There's 4 scenes throughout the movie in this room, and we didn't really plan this, but we read recently that painting a whole room pink has like a psychological effect on you. Like football teams used to paint the opposing teams' locker rooms all pink, and it would make them like less violent or less, you know, athletic or something, and it's actually outlawed. And it's like, it's an actual concept. You can look it up. There's like, you know, scientific papers about it, but we did not plan that. But the images in this like article look exactly like our pink room. They're just, everything's painted pink. So I wish we could say that was like a conscious choice.
I would disagree with Al and say we did plan that. And it was everything that works about the movie was completely in our heads beforehand. And yeah, but the colors, I mean, I don't remember really talking too much about colors. I mean, I think it just kind of comes naturally to Al, for, you know, I'm not a real big colors guy, but Al, I think, just loves the bright colors and the, you know, the bright green orange, I mean, the bright green frog mask, and the just the colorful costumes. And I think it's I think it's fun to put all these colors together, and then at the end we actually put everything on, we transferred everything to 16mm film, which kind of dulls the colors a little bit and makes them a little more like, you know, it has this sort of more timeless feel, and gives the colors a little dulled richness that I really love. And yeah, regarding there's one shot at the end that I think was the last one of the last shots that Studio X was able to do for us, which kind of came out of nowhere at the very end and ended up being a really amazing addition, which was there's a scene in the pink room where a series of products are falling from the sky. And we had some practical products falling from the sky while we shot, but it wasn't quite that visceral impact we were looking for. So we were able to add like twice as many, and you guys made, and it just really upped the ante about of just making that a really dramatic moment, and it felt like really much more dangerous. But when I think of the colors in that movie, in our movie, that scene stands out, just the sort of and we actually in post made those colors pop a little bit more, like in a hyper color, like just like these really dramatic reds and oranges and greens that make it look like this surreal, I don't even remember what we were referencing, but it just felt really scary how colorful they were. And some of the moments felt scary. The color felt scary to me, especially the scene at the end when we're walking down the aisle and the bubbles are going off and everyone's in their bright costumes. And it really, there's something sometimes very unsettling about a lot of color or too much color coming at you at once.
I feel like color was a major player in your film. I mean,
Yeah.
even to the point where that car in the beginning is that aqua, like it really is so beautifully saturated. And I would say with the 16 transfer or the film out, whatever, that it maybe had, it still felt really stylized and really colorful to me. And it really it was almost like color as a mood. Like it really helped tell the story. And I just want to mention that Ron Morelli comped and did the shot with the dropping objects that you were speaking of, and he's here today. So if you want to speak anything to that, Ron, go for it.
I want to thank Maria. Me and Maria.
Oh, Maria worked on it too. Okay.
Yeah, Maria and I were, because we got the CG models from Jason's class, and then me and Maria were like, okay, we got to get these textured, and then I had to come up with a quick way for turning 5 objects into hundreds of objects and then having them drop from the sky. But it worked really well. But again, you know, it's a group effort. So I'm really happy that you liked it. But I could not have done that without Maria or even Jason Patnode in his CG class. Yeah, Jason is a good guy.
Yeah, we love that shot.
Thank you.
I also just was thinking in terms of color, like I feel like our DP was really great, Tyler Davis, at like taking everything that was in this world, and I think he probably had, obviously color plays such a huge role in this movie, and I think it came together, and that's probably because he was looking out for that a lot, and the way that he was lighting all of the shots with that like soft and lots of haze, I think it just, yeah, he probably was like taking I'm thinking about it, he probably was like taking things out that like stood out and we didn't even notice, and he had his eyes on color a lot.
Yeah, that haze adds that kind of never-ending story vibe, and the cinematography also just knocks me out on that. But Kentucker, I like you called it scary colorful, because I think you can saturate something so much that it is like menacing. Like,
yeah, that's what we did on that one shot. Is it wasn't scary enough because not enough things were falling and the colors seemed a little too muted. But like making it more colorful made it more scary. But yeah, I mean, I think costumes were a big part of the color too, and as well as the DP. Like Emma said, our DP was amazing with capturing the color schemes. But our costuming was also very colorful, and a lot of the special effects obviously were poppy and colorful.
I remember reading years ago, especially since fast food plays a part of this, maybe some of the menace in this as well. I remember reading years ago that fast food places would intentionally make their interior design really ugly or chaotic colors or saturated colors so that people would want to leave, so they could not have people just sitting there too long. So, yeah. So that's kind of interesting. All those things, come together.
I worked in a movie theater when I was in high school, and they had us wear orange outfits because they said the psychology of it was that it made people hungry. So,
so you manipulate people with color, definitely.
Yeah, all that was planned.
Here's a question. This is for Jason, and you answered it in the chat, but I'm going to change it because I think of everyone here, you're the one who has worked in both practical and digital. So what is it like to transition, your mind from one to the other, to work on one or the other over your career? And I think you're muted.
I did the transition. I think I did practical effects on my first movie back in God, I'm going to date myself here, but the early 90s. I worked on a movie, did some practical stuff on it that was so bad they turned it into a Mystery Science Theater spoof. So it's better now because it's that, but
you got to tell us what it is so we can look it up, though.
That was right when things were transitioning from practical to CG, and so it was a smooth transition. It was pretty seamless for me. I kind of just started seeing where everything was heading, and I just kind of went along with it.
You know what I
So-
think is really beneficial about it with you, Jason, is like, if, on many projects, Jason will say, we could do this with dynamics, but, let's just go down to the green screen and shoot. Like, I think it would be, better to do like a combo or so, having him know both of those disciplines has been really helpful.
Yes,
I feel like I have to pay people money now because everyone's like complimenting me.
Oh, here, I'll tell them what really happens. You go down into the green screen, and then there's all these like fake blood everywhere. And I have to clean it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a lot of blood.
So going back to this, because this is another long question, but to narrow it down a bit, you guys worked on. We had CG, we had compositing, so a lot of the stuff from the Studio X people, but even also the stop motion from other people. So I want to hear from our directors and producer, and then also from Studio X. How much time does that take is really what this person's asking. Can you work on things simultaneously? Can you start some of that and then finish? Like, how much time does it take from start to finish to do some of these really complicated things?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it kind of took all year. Like we filmed in like the fall of 2019, and then started editing like in January, and started talking to like our stop motion people a little bit after that. And as like the edit changes, you don't want to get people working on stuff too early because those scenes might not make it. So it's like there was a couple months of just like editing the story, and then it was like, okay, I think we're ready for some of these other elements. And maybe it works. Maybe it's faster on like a bigger film when people are getting paid like to do that and only that. But a lot of our people we had working for us had like day jobs or had other jobs, and so it was a little bit like they'd work a little bit here, or they had like one little window of 3 weeks that they're not going to be able to do it for 2 months until 2 months from now they can have 3 weeks that they can do it on, and you're kind of just like waiting for all these different elements to happen. And just like a lot of back and forth. So they would send you the rough and you'd look at it and give some notes, and then they'd go back and reanimate it, and that would take like another month or 6 weeks or something. So it was, I mean, we were all of our different people, not just Studio X, all our other animators and special effects people were all in the crunch time. And like, we were sending out emails like, okay, we really need it by next Tuesday, okay, we need it by next Wednesday if you can't get Tuesday. So I guess everybody wants a little bit more time when they're working on these things.
I think that same question asked, like, how long did it take you from the beginning of the process to the end?
Yeah. It's a long time, right?
You mentioned, Albert, that you and Emma were even today just doing some notes on the sound, right? Like, so you're still not done, right? You're still like trying to tweak some stuff.
Yeah. It's like, because of this, the pandemic and stuff, we haven't really been able to like watch it together. And, we worked with our sound person through Zoom and went back and forth, but we just, we had to rush to finish it for Sundance. But now that we have a little bit of time, we just want to like, finalize some things. And Kentucker hasn't even heard these notes yet, but after watching today in like a really good sound system, there's like all these like kind of big things like, oh wow, the score needs to come up here, or the score needs to come down here, or this sound design is too loud in this moment. Like little things like that you can watch the film and appreciate it, but like you want it to be perfect. You want to kind of, and like sound is the last thing, sound in the music. So that's where we're at, is kind of just like making sure we have the best mix. But if we're talking like whole timeline, like this movie has been, gestating and brewing for like 12 years from the initial concept. And kind of, I emailed Kentucker in 2012, a first draft of the script. I didn't really know him, just said, I've seen you in a couple movies, do you want to act in this? And he was very polite and said, yeah, well, that's cool. Let's talk. Like, it wasn't ready at that point, obviously. And over the years, as we got to know each other and make other projects together, it was always kind of in the back of our minds. And honestly, like as of a couple of years ago, I was like, well, that's the idea that got away, like I'm just never going to make that movie, and I have to just be okay with that. And a couple of things in Baltimore. There's this great grant that we got. Just little things like started to happen where it was like, okay, we can actually make this. You know, like Emma and our other producers came on board, and they understood that this isn't like the $20 million movie that the script feels like. We can make it practically in Baltimore with DIY aesthetics and paper mache frog masks and so, you know, it's a long process for anyone out there who feels like they have like ideas that are, you know, they're never going to happen. I'd say just like keep working on it, and you know, your life might take you on other little paths and you might go away from the idea, but if you really need it to come out, you know, hopefully you'll find your way back to it, and it will find its way out in the world in some form or another. And that's, I feel like, what this movie, that was like the grand lesson, was just like, you know, follow your dreams or something. I don't know. That's cheesy. I want to mute myself now.
No, I want to hear from others on that question too, but it's it is still an indie movie. It's at Sundance. It's just, it's got the ability to be also a science fiction movie and a fantasy movie. And, and I'm wondering what you guys think about that. Like, how much, with all of the variety, because the older ways didn't go away, with all the variety of effects that are available, I mean, are indie filmmakers poised? I mean, are we going to see more of this, where we just have effects and concepts that could rival any blockbuster?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like special effects in indie movies are kind of, for some reason over the last 20 years or so, maybe before that, they haven't really mixed in the way that I think we're mixing them. You know, it's a total indie movie sensibility, but then we're trying to do things that like you're not supposed to do outside of Disney movies or, superhero movies, or just this, like, really pay attention to the special effects elements of it, and the fantastical elements, which a lot of serious indie movies don't really tap into very often. But I mean, we would love to. I don't know. I personally just, I'm so excited about more visually adventurous movies coming out of the indie realm, and I feel like the tools are there, and you can do so much with practical and post VFX that it's just like it's there for the taking if any filmmakers are interested enough to go in that route. And it's just a matter of like, I mean, we just love, like, maybe it's us growing up in the 80s, but it's just like that's what comes natural to us, is like see these movies that aren't just people sitting around in their apartments talking to each other, which is a lot of the indie movies. So we'd love to see it happen where more effects enter the picture. But we'll see.
What do you guys think? Are VFX folks, you want to see more indie movies with VFX in them?
It's funny, Ron, Will, but for a long time, yeah. For a long time, people started thinking that visual effects were cheaper to do than practical effects. And that's not often the case, actually, because they usually require a larger team and the length of time to create them is longer. So they can oftentimes be more expensive than practical. So it's cool to see films come along that try to do practical stuff and then add in VFX in a seamless manner when needed. I find that quite refreshing.
We did that actually a lot with Beasts of Southern Wild. It was a similar kind of, practical miniatures and then mixing them with CG and with compositing. It's fun.
Yeah, it really is like my favorite to see practical and digital play nice together. I think partially because 10, 20, maybe even 30 years ago, people were, these are enemies, and it's like, no, not really. They're just different tools for directors to use. So yeah. All right, well, we are almost out of time, but this question has been asked multiple times in the chat, so I felt it was a good question to ask last. Where can they find the movie? Do we know yet where people want to know where they can stream it, watch it? They're pounded down the gates. They want to see this.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that out. It's gonna be playing festivals this year. Keep your eye out for your local festivals. But yeah, hopefully sometime later this year it'll be released, or next year even. I don't know. It takes so long. It's frustrating. I just wish we wish that it could just be seen by everybody now. But
can you guys put it maybe in the chat, like a link to your Instagram or something, just so folks can follow you if they want to see where it's going to be showing?
Definitely, yeah, we'll get that over there right now. And that's going to be the best spot. Our Instagram has will have updates. Let me see if I can get that over there. One second.
I think Emma did it.
Emma got it. Emma got you.
But yeah, like
Thanks,
a
Emma.
lot of festivals will be playing at our. Oh, there's. Yeah, check it out there. And also, in the meantime, if you go to our Instagram and look at a bunch of the images right before bed and just think about it as you're falling asleep, you might dream a better version of the movie than is actually there. That's one thing I'll say. This movie's all about dreams, and it still is not as good as our own dreams. Our own dreams will always be the best movie we'll ever see. So some of you might dream the movie, a better version of the movie tonight. And if you do, write it down, because that's your movie now.
Eat a big bucket of food. Right.
Yeah, I might go get a chicken shake or something.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, if you have that before bed, you're gonna have some other weird dreams.
You'll have weird dreams if you eat that right before bed. Any other parting thoughts? Those are some great parting thoughts. Anybody else?
I just want to mention that Jan Lee, he didn't get a chance to speak. I just want to acknowledge Jan and all the finaling work he did to get these shots to completion. And if there's anything you wanted to mention, is there anything you wanted to say or add to?
Oh, I'm very glad to join this project. Very thanks Catherine and Sasha give me this chance. Yeah.
You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love seeing these shots because I kind of just see them when it's time to do like a big discussion or something like this, and I get to see them at the end, and then seeing the movie. Like people don't have any idea, just they're gonna get walloped in the face with so much stunning dream imagery, dreamscape after dreamscape. The mice are my favorite. I have a lot of other favorites, but everybody's gonna walk away with a different favorite. So,
I'm fond of the frog.
The frog, Zach's frog, is really cool too.
Yeah.
So there's too many. We could never give them all away. There's too many. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this fun, casual discussion of Strawberry Mansion, and we'll keep you all updated on where you can find it. There are also some links for Studio X if you want to find out more about Studio X. And thank you all for joining us. Until next time. See you. Be safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.